Ella had never thought a simple drive could feel so heavy with emotions, yet as she pulled into the driveway and saw Liam bouncing with excitement next to his friend Noah, a curious thrill ran through her that she couldn't name, something that felt like nostalgia and longing all mixed together. The kind of emotion that made her heart tighten and loosen at the same time, a paradox she hadn't expected on an ordinary day. Liam, ever the chatterbox, immediately started telling jokes and stories about school, about the way he and Noah had teamed up for a project, how they had raced to finish it first, and Ella listened with a soft smile, feeling a warmth spread inside her as she watched their friendship in action, the easy laughter between them reminding her of youth she'd lost somewhere along the way, moments of pure, uncomplicated happiness she hadn't realized she missed. She adjusted the seat and checked her mirrors, ready to drive, but when she glanced at Noah, she noticed the way he was looking out the window with a quiet, thoughtful expression, the kind that made her pause and wonder what he was thinking, what dreams and stories lay behind those eyes, and before she knew it, the air in the car felt charged, though nothing had yet happened, the energy between them subtle but present, an invisible thread connecting them in ways she didn't quite understand. The engine hummed to life, the road stretching out ahead bathed in late afternoon sunlight, golden and forgiving, and Ella felt the familiar calm that driving brought her, a sense of control and freedom, but now it was mixed with a nervous anticipation she hadn't felt before, a hint of curiosity about the boy sitting in the passenger seat, quiet but somehow magnetic, the one who made her wonder about possibilities she never allowed herself to imagine. Liam immediately took the center of the conversation, asking about music, movies, everything under the sun, jumping from topic to topic, and Ella smiled and answered, keeping the conversation light, but Noah leaned forward at one point to suggest a playlist, his hand brushing against hers briefly on the dashboard as he reached to adjust the volume, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her, one she tried to ignore, telling herself it was nothing accidental, but her heart had already skipped a beat, the warmth lingering as she stared at the road, pretending to focus, pretending not to feel the electric charge of the moment, but knowing she would remember it for a long time. The boys continued to talk, their voices overlapping, their energy contagious, and Ella found herself stealing glances at Noah under the pretense of checking the mirrors, noting the way the light caught his hair, the curve of his jaw as he laughed, the subtle way he seemed aware of her presence even while looking out the window, and she felt a strange mix of protectiveness and fascination, a complicated cocktail of emotions that made her pulse quicken. She thought about the innocence of the boys' friendship and the complexity of her own response, realizing that she had never felt such a sharp awareness of another adult's presence in a casual moment, and yet it was not inappropriate, just a human connection that felt profound because it was unexpected, because it reminded her she was alive, that she could still feel, still long, still wonder about possibilities she had tucked away in the back of her mind. The car turned onto the main road, the city bustling around them, but inside, a bubble of quiet intensity formed, as though the outside world had faded, leaving just the three of them in a space where emotions hovered unspoken, where laughter and shared stories masked the subtle tension that Ella could feel stretching like a delicate thread from Noah to herself. He made a joke about the traffic, and his eyes met hers for a moment, holding a depth that made her catch her breath, a gaze full of curiosity and openness, a moment that felt fragile yet significant, and she found herself smiling, trying to keep the car steady, trying to maintain the routine of driving while inside, her mind whirring with thoughts she hadn't expected to confront today. Liam, oblivious to the undercurrent, started pointing out landmarks, telling a story about a playground they liked, and Ella laughed along, but every sound, every movement seemed magnified in her awareness, the way Noah tilted his head, the slight arch of his brow when he asked a question, the careful way he adjusted his posture as if to give her space while somehow drawing her attention in, and she felt a warmth that was both confusing and exhilarating, a quiet thrill she couldn't quite name, but couldn't ignore. The sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows over the dashboard and onto their faces, and Ella noticed the subtle changes in light, the way it illuminated Noah's profile, the softness in his expression as he listened to Liam, and her thoughts drifted to what it meant to connect with someone this way, to feel drawn to a person in an innocent yet intense manner, a connection that seemed to bypass words and speak directly to the heart, and she wondered how she would navigate the rest of the drive without letting her emotions show, without breaking the fragile balance of the moment. They stopped at a red light, and Noah leaned over slightly to adjust the music, his hand brushing hers again, this time more noticeable, though still fleeting, and she felt a shiver run through her, an acknowledgement of something unspoken, something that neither of them named but both were aware of, a recognition of the quiet electricity that had entered the car like an unexpected passenger. Liam, oblivious to the tension, kept talking, but the words became background noise as Ella felt the moment stretch, as though time had slowed and the world outside the car no longer mattered, leaving just the three of them suspended in a bubble of emotion, of shared space, of subtle glances and fleeting touches, a delicate web of connection that would leave its mark on her long after the drive ended. When the light turned green, the sudden movement startled them, snapping Ella back to reality, the spell breaking, but the memory of that touch, that look, that brief moment of shared awareness lingered, leaving her both exhilarated and unsettled, aware that something in her had shifted, that the ride was no longer just a drive, but the beginning of an internal journey she hadn't anticipated, a journey into feelings she had kept quiet, feelings that whispered of longing, curiosity, and a tender connection she couldn't yet define. As the car continued down the road, laughter filling the space again, Ella felt the strange duality of the moment. The joy of being with her nephew and his friend, the comfort of routine and shared stories, and the subtle pull of a deeper, quieter emotion that reminded her she was capable of feeling more than she allowed herself to admit, that even in ordinary moments life could surprise her with sparks she hadn't expected, and that sometimes the simplest rides could leave the most profound impressions on the heart. The cityscape blurred past, yet inside, Ella felt a heartbeat, a rhythm, a tension that lingered between her and Noah, something unspoken but undeniable, a tiny promise that the afternoon, though seemingly mundane, had opened a door to emotions and experiences she wasn't ready to label but knew would stay with her, quietly shaping her thoughts, her desires, and the way she looked at the world and the people she cared about. By the time they approached the park, the laughter had calmed, the energy settled into a soft hum, but the connection remained, lingering in glances, in small gestures, in the awareness of a presence that seemed to understand her without words, leaving Ella with a sense of anticipation, a gentle ache of curiosity, and the subtle thrill of knowing that life could surprise her even in the simplest of moments, that even a routine drive could become a canvas for emotion, for longing, and for a quiet, unfolding story that was just beginning, one she would carry in her heart long after the car was parked and the boys ran ahead, laughing, into the fading light of a day that had seemed ordinary but had quietly become unforgettable. The drive continued, but something had shifted in the car, an invisible current flowing between Ella and Noah that made ordinary moments feel electric, subtle yet undeniable, a tension she couldn't quite name but couldn't ignore, as Liam's voice filled the space with stories and jokes, bouncing from one topic to another, leaving Ella caught between the comfort of his chatter and the magnetic pull she felt toward Noah, whose quiet presence contrasted with Liam's energy, drawing her attention in ways that made her stomach tighten and her pulse quicken, and she realized with a jolt that her thoughts kept drifting toward him, imagining what it might mean to truly connect with someone like this, someone whose eyes held a depth that mirrored her own unspoken longings, someone whose smile could make her heart skip a beat even when he wasn't saying anything at all. And the irony of feeling such intensity in the middle of a casual ride didn't escape her. The mundane act of driving suddenly transformed into a stage where emotions danced in silence, delicate and fragile, yet entirely captivating. Noah had grown quieter now, listening intently to Liam's stories, nodding along, but Ella noticed the small gestures that betrayed his awareness of her. The subtle way he adjusted in his seat, the way his fingers lingered on the edge of the dashboard as if sensing the space between them, the slight tilt of his head when he laughed that made her heart ache with something tender and undefined, a gentle tug that seemed to invite connection yet remained tantalizingly out of reach, and she felt an unusual mix of protectiveness and curiosity, emotions she rarely allowed herself to experience with such clarity, as if the universe had placed her in this exact moment to remind her that feelings could be complicated, layered, and quietly thrilling all at once. She tried to focus on the road, keeping her hands steady on the wheel, but the hum of the engine and the rhythm of the tires against the asphalt faded into the background as her mind wandered, dissecting each glance, each fleeting touch, each moment that seemed ordinary but now shimmered with significance, and she caught herself imagining conversations she might never have, thoughts she had never dared to entertain, questions about who Noah really was beneath the surface, about the dreams he carried in his heart, and the kind of person who could hold such presence without trying. Someone who could make a mundane afternoon feel like a turning point in life. Liam suddenly turned to ask a question about the playlist, and the boys began debating over songs, their voices overlapping, playful and carefree. But Ella barely noticed the argument, caught as she was in a swirl of emotion, noting how Noah's hand brushed against hers again while adjusting the stereo. A contact as light as a whisper but enough to send warmth flooding through her chest, a sensation that made her shiver in quiet disbelief. A reminder that human connection often came in the smallest gestures, the most fleeting moments, and that sometimes the heart recognized what the mind struggled to define. She remembered times she had ignored such subtle signals, times she had chalked them up to coincidence or imagined them entirely, but now there was no denying the magnetic pull between them, no way to dismiss the soft tension that hummed in the space of the car, an energy that was both exciting and frightening, stirring up a longing she had long tried to keep in check, a longing for intimacy, understanding, and the rare kind of trust that could blossom in silence, shared moments and quiet acknowledgement of each other's presence. Noah spoke softly then, his voice almost hesitant, telling her something personal about a dream he had, a story he rarely shared with anyone, and the vulnerability in his tone made Ella's chest tighten, a delicate ache of empathy and curiosity blooming within her, an instinctive desire to reach out and respond, to offer reassurance, to become a part of his story without overstepping boundaries, without letting the moment become awkward or forced, and she realized that this was the paradox of the ride. The ordinary task of giving the boys a lift had evolved into a stage for emotion, for connection, for the kind of tension that made hearts pound and thoughts race in a quiet, almost sacred way. The sunlight had dipped lower now, slanting through the windows and painting the interior with streaks of gold, illuminating Noah's profile as he spoke, casting shadows that highlighted the subtle curve of his features, the slight furrow in his brow as he thought, and Ella found herself studying him in a way she had never done before, a careful observation born of fascination, attraction and the simple, undeniable human desire to connect with someone deeply, a desire that made her wonder how much of this moment was real, and how much was the imagination of a heart suddenly alert to possibility. Liam, oblivious to the tension, leaned forward to point out a shop they passed, laughing and teasing, but his energy seemed to heighten the contrast, making the quiet intensity between Ella and Noah stand out even more sharply. The mundane sounds of traffic, the occasional honk, the faint whir of the car blending with the subtle rhythm of their shared, unspoken understanding, creating a symphony of emotion that played only for them, though neither had yet spoken the words that would name it. As they approached a narrow street, Ella noticed Noah glance at her, a small, almost shy smile playing on his lips, a gesture so fleeting it could have been missed, yet it struck her deeply, leaving her breathless with recognition, an acknowledgement that something had shifted, that the ride was no longer just a task or a favor, but an experience, a moment suspended in time that carried with it the weight of longing, curiosity, and the fragile thrill of what might come if the quiet tension were ever explored. The light turned red just then, forcing them to stop, and in the pause, the car seemed to hold its breath with them, the world outside slowing down, leaving only the soft hum of emotion swirling inside, a mix of anticipation, attraction, and the delicate dance of self-restraint. And Ella felt an ache of desire to reach out, to say something meaningful, yet she remained silent, knowing the balance was delicate, that moments like these were precious precisely because they were quiet, unforced, and undefined. Noah leaned forward slightly, adjusting the air vent, his hand brushing hers again, more noticeable this time, and Ella felt the warmth surge again, a gentle, thrilling pulse that seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat, a quiet reminder that human connection often arrived in the smallest touches, in fleeting glances, in the awareness that someone else's presence could stir your soul without a single word being exchanged. Liam started humming a song, filling the car with his carefree energy, and Ella laughed softly, the sound mingling with the music, the sunlight, the quiet intensity between them, forming a bubble of memory she knew would linger, a moment of emotional resonance that would color her days for weeks to come, leaving her reflecting on how ordinary life could suddenly feel extraordinary. How the simple act of giving a ride could become a doorway to feelings she had long denied. A subtle awakening to the complexities of attraction, empathy, and human connection. As the red light turned green and the car rolled forward, the spell of the pause lingered, the energy between them shifting slightly but never fading, and Ella realized that this ride, which had begun as a simple favor, had quietly evolved into a chapter of emotion she wasn't prepared for. A chapter filled with unspoken understanding, mutual curiosity, and the kind of subtle romantic tension that made the ordinary sparkle. that made the mundane feel alive with possibility, and she knew that even when the car eventually stopped at the park and the boys ran ahead, laughing and shouting, the shared silence, these small touches and glances would remain, a quiet promise that life had a way of surprising hearts in the most unexpected of ways, that moments of connection could appear when least expected, and that the ride, the drive, the ordinary day had quietly become unforgettable, leaving her mind spinning, her heart racing, and her soul stirred in ways she hadn't known it could be stirred, with anticipation, curiosity, and a tender longing that would follow her long after the engine was turned off. To be why the time Ella pulled into the park, the afternoon sun had dipped low, painting the horizon in soft oranges and pinks, casting long shadows that danced across the dashboard, and the car felt like a fragile capsule of emotions, a space where laughter, tension, and unspoken thoughts coexisted in perfect, delicate balance, leaving her heart both full and heavy as she glanced at Noah, who sat quietly in the passenger seat, his expression calm but thoughtful, like he too sensed the significance of the moments they had shared, the small gestures, the fleeting touches, the subtle glances that had carried more weight than any words could have conveyed, and for a brief second the world outside, the chirping of birds, the distant hum of traffic, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, faded away, leaving only the hum of their shared presence, a bubble of quiet understanding that seemed suspended in time, fragile yet unforgettable. Liam leapt out of the car first, calling back over his shoulder about which playground to head to, his energy bright and effortless, leaving Ella and Noah alone for a moment in the stillness of the car, and she felt a wave of awareness wash over her, a gentle ache of curiosity and longing, as though the universe had handed her this pause to reflect, to notice the small details she had missed while focusing on keeping the drive smooth and the boys entertained, the angle of sunlight catching Noah's hair, the curve of his lips as he relaxed, the softness in his eyes that spoke of trust, awareness, and an unspoken connection she couldn't ignore. She inhaled slowly, feeling the warmth of the fading sun, feeling the quiet rhythm of her heartbeat in tandem with the subtle tension between them, and realized that she had been carrying a subtle storm of emotion throughout the ride, a mix of admiration, attraction, empathy, and wonder, a longing that wasn't urgent or overwhelming but quiet and persistent, leaving her thinking about how rare it was to meet someone who stirred such curiosity and feeling in such a fleeting moment, someone who could make an ordinary day feel like a turning point, like the start of something both unexpected and beautiful. Noah's eyes met hers for just a moment, a shared glance loaded with the weight of everything unsaid, a gentle acknowledgement of the unspoken tension that had been building, and Ella felt her chest tighten, a mixture of surprise, warmth, and excitement that made her fingers curl on the steering wheel, a soft reminder that emotions could be complex, subtle, and transformative, that human connection often arrived in quiet, unexpected ways, and that even ordinary experiences could leave impressions that lingered in the heart far longer than the moments themselves. She wanted to speak, to break the silence, but words felt unnecessary. They were both aware of the delicate thread that connected them, a thread spun of gestures, glances, small touches, and shared attention, and it was strong enough to exist without verbal acknowledgement, a silent promise that the moment mattered, that their awareness of each other's presence was meaningful and rare, and that even as life moved forward, this shared memory would linger like a soft echo in their hearts. The boys' laughter carried from the park as Liam waved at her and ran ahead with Noah following, and Ella stayed in the car a little longer, letting the quiet settle around her, absorbing the residual warmth, the tension, and the gentle thrill of the afternoon, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected intimacy that had blossomed in such a simple setting, realizing that life often delivered moments like this when least expected, and that sometimes it was the small, quiet experiences that left the most profound impressions, moments that made her heart ache softly, like a reminder that she was alive, that she could still feel deeply, and that connection, genuine, subtle, emotional, could appear even in the most ordinary circumstances. She thought about Noah's quiet demeanor, the way he had shared a small part of himself, the way he had noticed her without forcing attention, and the warmth of his presence lingered like a soft glow, leaving her reflecting on the beauty of subtle human interactions, the power of being seen, and the way emotions could unfold slowly, tenderly, creating tension, connection, and longing in ways that didn't need to be rushed, didn't need to be loud, but were just as significant as any overt gesture or declaration. Ella started the engine to leave, her mind replaying the moments over and over, The accidental brushes of hands, the shared smiles, the fleeting glances that carried more weight than words, the quiet empathy she had felt for Noah's vulnerability, the gentle thrill of his attention, and she realized that she would carry these memories with her, not as regret or confusion, but as a quietly profound chapter of her life, one that reminded her that emotion, attraction, and human connection were subtle forces that could shape her day, her thoughts, and even her dreams. As the car rolled slowly down the path leading away from the park, the shadows lengthened, the air grew cooler, and the rhythm of the ride seemed to echo the rhythm of her own heart, both steady and filled with anticipation, a sense that the ordinary had been transformed into the extraordinary, that a simple favor, a ride for her nephew and his friend, had opened a window to feelings and experiences she hadn't anticipated, a quiet awakening to the beauty of subtle connection, of romantic tension that existed without labels, of emotional intimacy that could be felt without spoken words. And as she drove past trees swaying in the soft breeze, she couldn't help but smile at the memory of Noah's shy, meaningful glances, the warmth of his hand near hers, the way he had quietly shared pieces of himself, leaving her feeling simultaneously exhilarated, contemplative, and tenderly alive. Every turn of the wheel, every passing streetlight, every shift in the sunlight seemed to amplify the emotional resonance of the afternoon, making her realize how quickly ordinary moments could become profound, how easily hearts could be stirred by subtle interactions, and how fleeting yet lasting a single shared experience could be, creating a memory that would linger in quiet moments, in reflections during the night, in unexpected smiles during mundane tasks, reminding her that life was full of these delicate, transformative encounters if only one was present enough to notice them. Ella's thoughts wandered to what might come next, whether there would be another shared drive, another moment of quiet connection, or whether this would remain a memory suspended in time, beautiful precisely because it was incomplete, unfinished, yet rich with possibility, and she felt a gentle ache of longing that was sweet, not painful, a reminder that sometimes anticipation itself could be as powerful as fulfillment, that a story could be felt deeply even when unresolved, and that human hearts were designed to notice, to feel, and to treasure subtle connections that spoke louder than words ever could. The hum of the engine, the slight rustle of leaves brushing against the windows, the fading sunlight illuminating her path, all these ordinary details became woven with emotion, creating a tapestry of sensation and reflection, making Ella aware of the intricate balance between everyday life and profound feeling, between responsibility and desire, between what was safe and what was quietly thrilling, and she realized that the memory of this ride, this shared space of subtle attraction, empathy, and mutual understanding, would stay with her long after the park disappeared from view, long after Liam and Noah became just figures in the distance, a chapter quietly etched into her heart, a story that could be retold in her mind.